Right, so welcome to the second video on the Model D patch series. So this is how this will go. First, I will show you the final result so you can maybe copy the settings. And then we build the patch from the ground up. That's the idea. So everything is on the timeline. So you can listen to the final patch, keep watching, or move on to the next one. So we will always start from a default patch like this one. Right, so you already listened to the first patch. Let's break it down. Okay, so let's just, break it down. So what I want to do, I want to do some kind of a modulation. I want to modulate either the pitch or we can do the filter. Maybe we can try the filter first and then the pitch. But I want to do it with the oscillator number 3 and we want to do it on the oscillator rate. I could go to the low right here and, use it as an LFO. But in this case, I'm just going to keep it on right there. Now I'm going to go to not the lowest, I'm going to go to the 32s and I'm going to leave this one all the way off and all the way down. This one is going to be on, so if I play it, it's just going to be like that. We are standing on 16, I'm going to leave it right there. This one is going to be a saw. And this one, again, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to go lower. I'm going to go to 32s. And this one, I'm going to go to a narrow pulse. Now, this one needs to be on and the volume all the way up. So now we have two oscillators on the same spot. All of this is just going to be off. I'm not going to use the noise and I'm not going to use the external volume. Now, a lot of the things are going to happen right here. We're going to take care of that in a minute. But first, we need to take care of this, the situation right here. So we are going to be doing a low. And in this case, I'm going to do modulation with the filter. So I'm going to just leave it on. And for now, I'm just going to turn this one off. We're going to see how it sounds with that one on. And in this case, right here, I'm going to go off on the first one. And I'm going to be doing on the second one. And right now, you're not going to, tell a difference because we are not doing any kind of a modulation. We are not really using the envelopes. Now, in terms of this, I do want a little bit of tail. If I play something, and even if I add attack, it's still, when I play something, it just dies right there. I do want some decay, and I do want some decay on the filter. So I'm going to turn them on, and now they're just much, much longer. And I'm going to make them super long. So this is kind of a drone-ish kind of a sound. So I'm going to go to the 200, between 200 and 600 right there. And this is going to be a little bit slow and it's going to be sustaining. Now, of course, I'm not playing it right now. It's going to sustain because this is super long. So if you want to just kill it, you just off and then you turn it on and there you go. So we want to use the amount of contour, but first I want to do some filtering. I want to go right there to maybe around 2, and they're going to go up to 6 and maybe 7. Yeah, I believe that's fine. Maybe a little bit less. Okay, so in the case of amount of contour, I'm going to do just maybe something like that, like 3. And if I play something, it sounds like that. Now, we want to do something right here because we are not doing anything. I'm going to do half, maybe 50% on sustain. But right now, I need to do some decay. So I'm going to go and just make it 5 or something like that. In this case, on the attack, I'm still going to make it slow like the other one, like the attack on the amp. Now, if I play a key, we get that vibe. Right, so that's kind of the sound that we want. Now, we are doing this. We don't get a lot of a difference because we are not doing anything, right? So now the point is that, I'm going to kill it and just turn it off, is that we need to do some modulation right here. So this one needs to be all the way on the LFO. And this one, I'm going to leave it on the oscillator number 3 because that's what we're going to use. And right now, this doesn't matter right now. We can do a little bit of modulation, but you can use either the square or the triangle. It's completely up to you. Now, in this case, again, what we want to use the rate of this one to do some kind of modulation. Now, we need to choose what we want to use. In this case, you can do whatever you want. It's completely up to you. But in my case, I'm going to use, a saw. And I'm going to keep on 32s. This one needs to be all the way down for now. And right here, I'm going to go all the way to the oscillator number 3. Make sure we are all the way right here because we are doing the modulation with this one. So far, we are not doing anything. So if I go up, notice that we start getting something, especially not with this one, with the depth. Notice how it sounds. Yeah, that's what we get. And it's because we are doing modulation. And if I turn this one on again as well, we get that sound. If I turn it off, it's going to be a little bit less, just a little bit different. And then I'm going to go all the way up on the rate. Now, of course, we are not using the rate. Everything comes from the depth of whatever modulation we are doing right here on the filter when we play it. It comes from there. Now, you can make this low, but you're just going to turn it into a low-frequency oscillator. So we're going to hear the movement. In this case, we are just modulating it with oscillator rate. That's what we want in this case. All right. So I believe, maybe around here, it's fine. Now, at some point, since we are, all the way up on the LFO, and what we can do, we can just start moving the modulation, the mod mix, and this is going to take you to LFO land. So now we are just not modulating it with the oscillator number 3, we are doing it with the LFO. So now the LFO rate can just, provide some kind of a different modulation. And we are just modulating the cutoff right here. So in my case, I'm going to start just with the oscillator number 3, and at some point, when the sound decays, maybe, let me do it right now, I'm going to release it, the sound is decaying, we can go right here and just adjust the LFO and get different textures. That's the plan. But for now, I'm just gonna leave it right there. Now, you cannot argue that the sound, it's not, super cool. It's just, it sounds nice, it sounds aggressive, it sounds powerful, but, it's lacking a lot of things. And what it's lacking, it's effects. Now, in the case of the effects, I'm going to do quite a lot, and that's why I'm using multi-effects like the Helix or the HX Stomp. I believe it's HX or XH. I'm not sure. Stomp, where you get a million effects and you can chain them all. So I'm gonna tell you what I'm using, and I'm gonna give you a visual representation of what I'm doing, so you can maybe if you have the same thing I have, the same multi effects, you can just use it. So okay, so let's just begin with this. I'm gonna be using, and you're not gonna believe what I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna be using something that gives me some kind of movement, because if I play this, it's very dull. Right? It's just super dull. And I'm gonna go a little bit up in volume, just a little bit. There we go. It's gonna be super dull, it's just super static. So I need some kind of movement. So which effect is going to give us movement? Let me just turn it off. So we have phasers, that's gonna give me movement. Flangers, yeah, maybe a delay, a pan delay, maybe that's gonna give me some movement. And in this case, I'm gonna be using maybe a course, a fast course. But in this case, I'm going to use a univibe. Maybe you don't know what the univibe is. It's something very, famous in the 70s that maybe Jimi Hendrix used to play. And I actually have, the univibe, and I effing love it because I'm a guitar player mainly. And, I really love the univibe. But, it's that kind of effects that you don't use it the whole time. But sometimes you just want to try it, and it's going to give you that, univibe vibe. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on, and you're going to notice the difference. So now if I play something, notice that this is kind of giving me that movement. If I turn it off, it's going to sound super static. Yeah? So I much prefer the Univibe. Now, of course, with the Univibe, you have a speed and an intensity. If this is too aggressive for you, you can go down in the intensity. And in the case of the Helix, I can use I have a blend. Now I have a mix, which is something that maybe you don't have on a pedal, on a Univibe pedal. But in this case, I'm doing 50%. If I go all the way up on the Univibe, it's gonna sound maybe not that cool. It's like too much modulation. And I kind of like it, but I don't love it. I much prefer to keep some of the original sound. And I'm gonna go to 50% in this case. And now I'm 50% of the mix. And it's gonna give me that movement. All right. So we got the movement kind of covered. What else do we need? We need a little bit of depth. So what is going to give us depth? Well, a reverb is going to give us depth. So for now, I'm just going to go and just turn on a reverb, and this is going to be last on the chain. So the reverb is just a very simple reverb. It's going to be a Hall. I have a maybe not so long decay, just, half decay. And this is going to give us, of course, the depth. We can hear that it's, we are playing this on a location. In this case, it's going to be a Hall. All right, so, it sounds cool. This is giving us that depth. That's fine. Okay. So now we have movement and we have depth. What else do we want? Well, I want to make this sound a little bit wider and maybe, just make it wide. So what we can do, we can use a delay, maybe a ping pong delay, and then maybe we could use something like a chorus. Why not? So I'm going to bring a delay. Now, the delay I'm going to be using is going to be a ping pong delay, and I'm syncing the delay to 120 BPMs, which is going to be a quarter of note, 1/4. So if I play it right now, that's what I want. I want movement on the sides. Now, if you're listening to this on the phone, maybe it's just not going to work because maybe the phone is mono. So yeah, that's what I want. I want sound on the sides. And now it's just kind of a little bit too loud. So I'm going to just lower the volume, the final gain. Right, so that's it. Now, of course, if it's too much, because it is too much, we can go down on the mix. I'm way up on the mix. Maybe I'm going to go to something like 40s or something like that, which is still a lot. But we get a little bit less. Now, it depends on where you're going to put this. It's just a little bit better, but in my case, I want to make it, super big and wide. So I want that on the sides. I'm going to leave it at around 70%. Alright, so that's it. That's pretty much the whole sound if you think about this. Now I'm going to make it wider. I'm going to be using a chorus. So the chorus, it's just a chorus. I just want to make it, a little bit wider. Now, I'm using a chorus that is an emulation of a vintage kind of a chorus. I believe it's a Boss chorus. So it's a little bit too dark. And as soon as I turn it on, you can hear this. That is that it's much brighter, and the chorus just makes it darker. In my case, I like this, but you might, want to not use it, or maybe in this case, since I can do a mix, I can go down on the mix, on the chorus. And it's just going to be a little bit brighter. Right, so that's it, the Univibe is just kind of doing most of the work. If I turn it off and I play something again, it's, it's fine, but it's not super special. The Univibe gives us this. Gives us this vibe. I love it. Alright. So that is the sound. Now, one more trick. Remember that we talked about this, that we could use the LFO rate, especially when we decay or maybe when we are playing. So if I play something, I could, go to the LFO and play around with this when I play new keys. Because I want to, this is kind of a drone kind of a thing. Or you could just leave it there and just use it right there. Right. So remember to use this. It could be useful. So that's the sound, that's the patch. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's just break it down, always starting from a default patch. And I want to, create that kind of a pluck to do an arpeggio. I just want to do an arpeggio. So all the times right here are going to be very short. But right now, since, we have a default patch, and if I play something, it's just going to sound like that. So if I play the actual clip, what I want to use, it's gonna sound like that, so that's not very useful. So we need to make this better. So I'm using just right now this one. I'm gonna go down on this one. The volume is gonna be around, around there, and I'm gonna just turn it on. In this case, I'm gonna use the oscillator number 2 as well, and I'm just gonna go all the way up and just leave it on the same spot than this one, pretty much. And in this case, we want to use different ranges, and right here we are on very low range. So I'm gonna go up to 4. So now if I play this one, is much higher. So this one, instead of 16s, I'm gonna go to 8, which is lower than this one. So if I play them together, we get a cool sound. Now I'm gonna bring the third one. I'm gonna use it, and I'm gonna maybe go right there and just turn it on. And this one, it's going to be on 16s. So notice, what we are doing. It's 4, then we go to 8, and then we go to 16. And in this case, we are using saw for everything, so it's gonna sound. It's gonna sound like that, which is cool. But I want to make it, with a narrow pulse, so we can get, something else. And this one, since it's going to be the lows, it's very low. Not very low, but, it's our low. I'm going to go and make it, a triangle. So that's where we get the lows from. So, okay, so when we turn everything on, it's going to sound like... which is a little bit different than, using the saw. Right, so we get the main sound, which is cool, but this is just super simple. Now what I want to do, maybe let's try a little bit of noise and see if the noise just can help. Maybe that's just too much. I'm gonna go lower. Okay, I like it around there. Now the problem is right here, is on the envelope. We want some kind of a pluck, kind of a sound. So right now it's just super kind of a wide. The stain is all the way up. We're not using it, and then everything is up. So we don't want this. And on top of this, it is super kind of a bright. And I want to kind of just make a tiny movement. So I'm gonna leave it on low. I'm gonna do this, keep it on the low pass, not high pass. I'm gonna leave this one off, but I'm gonna go and just turn this one on, and I'm gonna have a no decay for the filter because I'm gonna use the decay from the envelope, the loudness contour. I'm sorry, not the envelope, the loudness contour. So just doing that, the sound will not change. Because we are not really using the envelope right here. We're not using the filter. We are not using anything. We are just, selecting the values. But now we just can, go up on the amount of contour. And maybe just gonna put it right here for now. Maybe I'm gonna change it. But I'm gonna cut frequencies. I'm just gonna make them around 50%. And I'm gonna be adding a little bit of resonance, which on ladder filter, which is what we have right here on this synth, the bass is just gonna go down a little bit. So now... we have something a little bit better, but the problem right now is the sustain. It's all the way up when I play a key. So I'm gonna go all the way down to the sustain and all the way down to the sustain right here. So if I play something, now we have a click. So that's the problem. Now we need a little bit of decay, but we are kind of getting to that, plucky kind of a sound. So we need some decay. Now I want something super short. So I'm gonna go and maybe keep it right there. And that is gonna give us the vibe of what we want. But maybe I want more decay right here. And I want something, not too much. I want to keep it very short. That sounds, a little bit better. Maybe it's too much. Yeah, maybe around there. And I'm making it like less than 10. Just a little bit less than 10. And I'm gonna go up on this one, on the contour, so we can have something brighter when we modulate this one. And there you go, that's kind of the patch. If I kind of play something, you know, an arpeggio, it sounds cool, right? Now, of course, we can go right here and just modify what we have right here. We can make it shorter. And that sounds cool as well. Now, if I keep it right there where we were, and I make the decay a bit longer, and of course, I can need to loop this. So let me just start over. There we go. So we were right there, below 10. As soon as I go up, of course, it's just going to make everything kind of a super long because the decay is just longer. And it's brighter, of course. But in this case, I just want to keep it short because I want this arpeggio kind of a thing. But it's less than 10, just a tiny, tiny little bit. Now if I turn this one off, we just get this one. This one is just, you know, giving us a lot. And this one gives us the lows. Right. So we don't need anything else. It's just the sound I want. Right, now the thing is that of course it sounds super dry, we need to add something. Right, so I'm going to be using a delay first, and the delay is going to be a tape delay. Why am I not using a simple delay or maybe a digital delay or something, you know, that has the more clean or pristine repetitions? And it's because this is kind of a very plucky and has a lot of high frequencies. So if I bring something like a digital delay, where I cannot maybe just low, kind of darken the repetitions, we're going to have a problem. It's going to be in the way. And that's, you know, a problem. So in my case, I much prefer to go to a tape delay, something that is a little bit darker and it's going to sit, you know, behind the main pluck. Now, the feedback is going to be around 50%. I'm using a lot of feedback. I could do less. And the mix is not going to be a lot. It's going to be not too aggressive. So if I play it right now, this is going to give us that, you know, something going on in the background. Now, if I go less, it's just going to be a little bit less obvious. But if I turn it off, we notice that there's something missing. Now, I'm doing 1/8. I'm going to go up on the mix. Now, the feedback is a little bit long. So if I play something, that is that we get a longish feedback. So we can make the feedback shorter if it's too much for you. I'm going to 30%. In this case, I just want a little bit more, so I'm going to keep it on the 45-ish, which is a long feedback. Off, and then on. So the idea is just to give us something going on in the background. And since the repetitions are so dark, this is just going to help. That is that they're very dark. That's why I'm going with a tape delay. I could use a bucket brigade delay as well. So, okay, so the next thing is that it sounds super narrow. Even though we are using a delay, and the delay, it's kind of a, it's kind of a giving us something, but the delay is mono. I'm using a mono delay, and I'm using it on purpose because the next thing is going to be stereo. And what I'm going to be using, you guessed it, it's going to be a chorus. So the chorus is pretty simple. On this chorus, I can do a blend, so I'm doing around 40-something percent. So if I play it, there you go. This is just going to make everything wider. Now, if you don't want this, wideness, you just can, make it smaller. In this case, with this the chorus, I can make this spread mono. I can just make the chorus mono. In this case, I just want that, super wide sound. Right? And the last thing on the chain is going to be a reverb, of course. And in this case, I'm going to be using a Hall, just like always. And since we have a super bright kind of a, sound, I want to say super bright, but it's kind of a bright. Sometimes using a reverb where we can cut the high frequencies and the low frequencies, if you have too much lows, is something super useful. Because if not, it's just going to be way too much in your, way in your face. So right now, I'm using the Hall reverb. The mix is going to be around 40-something percent. I'm going to be maybe putting it 40, which is something not super noticeable. But if I remove it, we notice it's not there. Right? It's pretty obvious. And in my case, if I'm cutting a lot of the super high frequencies of the reverb. So if I go to 100%, this is how the reverb sounds. If I don't cut the high frequencies, it's gonna sound like this. So cutting the high frequencies of the reverb, it's something very useful if you want to, if you want your main sound to shine and not, a lot of the room and the repetitions and everything else. So in this case, I'm gonna keep the reverb on 40 and I'm cutting all the way, all the way to down there. It's just a big cut, all the way to maybe 2K. Right? So, that's the sound. Now, one more thing, we are doing this kind of a block kind of a thing. So when we play, it sounds blockish, but you can go to the decay and make it bigger. Now, since I'm using an arpeggio, I need to have them short, right? I need to make them short. But if you're not doing an arpeggio, you can go up on the decay right here and just play, right? And maybe a little bit more sustain, something like that. And it's a completely different vibe. Now, it depends, of course, always on what you want to do. In my case, since we are using an ARP, I want to keep it short. So maybe you recognize the patch, the sound is Flashlight, that's the track. And I'm not trying to emulate the bass on that track. It's just a little bit different. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get as close to a bass as I can get. Now, of course, if you're a bass player, you can never get close to a bass, a real, bass, playing it just a bass. It's just, different thing. But, that's what I want to do. I want to add saturation and get a really bassy tone. Okay, so first, we always start from a default patch. I'm gonna be turning this on, and if I play the clip, it sounds ridiculous right now. It doesn't sound like we want. So in this case, I'm just gonna go down right here to the middle, and I'm gonna keep it on the background. I'm gonna keep it the saw. In this case, on this one, I'm gonna be putting it on 8. That's what I want. Why I want this low. It's gonna give us kind of that high part. We're gonna be chopping a lot of this up. Oh, and the cutoff frequencies should be all the way up. Sorry for that. Made a mistake on that one. And the amount on the contour should be all the way down. Okay. Then we have the second one. So I'm going to go all the way up on the volume of this one. And I'm going to make this a triangle. The triangle give us the meat of the bass. If I go super up, it just makes no sense. If I go too low, we are getting that kind of a bassy sound, right? So I'm going to keep it on 16, and I'm going to do the 32s on the last one. I'm going to go to triangle, and this one is going to be, not the low, it's going to be on 32. So we get the highs and the lows. Super lows, mid lows, and then the highs. Pretty simple, right? Now, by default, let me just stop it. By default, the overload, it's kind of a pre-wired, so you can overload it very simple, which is something that you cannot do, for example, on the MODEL D. You need to, use a cable. In this case, as soon as you go up on the external volume, you're going to be overloading. So if I play it and I turn it on, I'm going to go up, and notice that we will start to overload, and we are getting, what we want. Overload it doesn't sound like a bass. If I destroy it or crush it, it's what we want. And I'm getting closer, a little bit closer to a bass. For now, I'm just gonna leave it around there. Now, in terms of this one, I'm gonna go right here, keep it here, and I'm gonna just go in on this one and off on this one. And I'm just gonna keep this one so we can keep a little bit of tail. If not, it's just gonna be, cutting right away, which is, fine. Now the attack, I'm gonna keep them both all the way down. I'm gonna be adding a little bit of decay right here on this one, and a little bit of decay right here on this one. Now the thing is that we need to do some kind of a movement on this one, because I'm gonna be cutting a lot of frequencies. Now we are getting all the lows. which is cool, but we need some of the, some of the other frequencies. I'm just gonna keep it around there. And for now, I'm just gonna play with the decay. And I want to put it right there. I do want a little bit of sustain, but not that much. That is the difference. Very different, right? Now the sustain on the VCA, on the loudness contour in this case, is just gonna be like this. And now it sounds very dark. Now remember that we are doing overload. And it's kind of giving us this dark, bass. This bass sound. That's what we want. Now, of course, if you want to make it brighter, you can go up on this one and get a little bit of the high frequencies, mid-highs. Or just go darker and just go dark all the way. And it's more like a sub. In this case, I just want a little bit of that. Just a little bit. Now notice on the overload, it's overloading every time that the note plays. If I do a lot, it's gonna pretty much overload the whole time. So it's just too much, right? So I don't want this. I just want to overload when the note plays. And around there is just good for me. Now, this sounds cool. Gonna maybe get a little bit more highs. This sounds kind of cool, but I'm missing something. I just need to add something else. So sometimes when you, and especially when you're tracking, when you're making a track and you're using plugins and so on and so on and so on, you can add whatever you want. And in this case, what I want to do, I want to add a bass amp, an amp. And I'm going to bring a plugin from Plugin Alliance, a simulation of the Ampeg, and it's the SVT. Is a holy grail kind of a bass amp. I do have a bass, a couple bass amps, but it makes no sense to use them because maybe you don't have them, and you can easily get this plugin, which is a good plugin, and it's not very expensive. So now I'm going to be going through this configuration. I'm using right here a 4x10, and I'm using a little bit of bass. So remember, if I play it, it's going to sound like this. But if we go through the amp, we get a, just a bit better, more kind of a, let me go up in volume. It sounds more bassy, right? It sounds more like a bass. And that's what I want to achieve right here. Right. So of course, we can go now to the synth and, just modify it. Let's see what happens if we add more teeth. If we put this on the track, this is going to work, If I make it darker, it's going to be super low. In this case, I do want a little bit of that teeth. Now, you can remove this one and get all lows. Right? And that is going to give you that, super bass kind of sound. Right. Now, one more thing before we go to the next one. When you use a simulation or you go through an amp, part of the magic will come from the cab, from the speakers as well. So in this case, and let me just show you, since we are here. Right now we are doing we have 3 simulations, I guess. And it's the 4x10. Now this is the second one. Now the first one is going to be totally different. Right? Super different, right? And if I go to the other one, which is nothing. So just changing the cab the cabinet is going to give you really different tones. Right, so let's just break it down. We start, of course, from a default patch, and we want to create this kind of a dark brass or dark horn kind of a sound because we already made an ARP, we already made a bass, we made a kind of a drone-ish kind of a sound. So now it's, it's time to do a horn or a brass sound. So, okay, so let's just begin. Now, so of course, right now we are starting from a default patch. So I'm going to go to the first one. I'm going to put it right here on the 7. So this one, I'm going to put it on 8. And I'm going to use a tri-saw, which is not super aggressive, right? So it gives us less harmonics. So I want this, to kind of stay right there in the background. Because I don't want something super bright. I want something more the low, the low side. Now, if you want something more bright, you just need to switch it to, to a saw. In this case, I want this. So I'm going to go right here, enable the number 2, and I'm going to use a square. So I'm going to go up on this one. And of course, this one, since it's a square, it's going to be much louder than this one. A lot louder. Now this, I'm going to keep it on 16, and this one is going to go to 8. If I turn the first one off, this is just giving us very little. Let me go up. There we go. You can hear the difference. Okay, so next one is going to be this one, and this one is going to be, again, on 16s, but this one is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to keep it on, again, on the square, and maybe I'm going to make it a pulse. Maybe we can change between the 3 different pulses and see what happens. So what I want to, with this one, I want to detune it, because right now everything is just tuned to be on the same place. Everything is kind of if I make a C, everything is going to be a C. So I'm going to go up on this one. So everything is in a C. So I want to detune this one. Now notice that when you detune, at some point, when you're on the right spot, and let me go to a higher. There you go. So you're going to be, you notice that you can hear that you're on the right spot. I'm going to go further. And there you go. So I'm going to say around 5-ish and something. And if you think about this, what you could do, if you turn them all off, you can use a tuner. And a tuner will just, give you a reference of, where you are. And what we are doing, we are essentially playing whatever key we are playing on the keyboard. In this case, if I play a C, it's going to be a C. But right now, we are standing on a G. And with the tuner, I can just, be right in the spot along with a C. It's just going to sound like that. Without this one, it sounds very lonely. Right? So far, so good. We get our G, we get the C's if I play a C major, and it sounds super cool. Now we need to kind of fix this issue right here. I'm not going to use the overload, even though I can. I'm going to use an external distortion, kind of a pedal. So I'm going to go right there. I'm going to use a low pass. This one is going to be all the way up because we are going to be doing some modulation right there. We're going to talk about this, so I'm going to leave this one ready. This one is going to be off, and this one is going to be off. I'm just going to leave them both off. And in the case of the decay, I want to turn it on, and I want to turn it on. All right, so in terms of the envelope right here, the VCA, this is kind of a horn, so we need to kind of slowly ramp the sound. So I'm going to go maybe right there and stand on the, around there, right? And on the decay, I'm just going to make a long decay, something like that. So if I play a key, let me just go to the sustain, and I'm going to put it right there. So if I play a key and release it, it's going to take a long time to die, okay? So all the way down on the emphasis, you can do a little bit if you wish. It doesn't matter right now. But what I want to do, I want to go all the way down to the cutoff. So we are pretty much cutting, everything. So we need to go up on the amount of contour so we can do a little bit of modulation with the envelope. And I'm going to put it around 7. Then, we will change it if we need to. So, of course, we need to provide something. And this is a slowish kind of a sound. So we need to go up on the attack. So I'm going to go up to around 5-ish. On the decay, I'm going to do pretty much the same we have right here, around there maybe. And on this one, I'm going to maybe go right there. So around 7 or 6, something like that. So now if I play something, we get it. And notice that it's ramping and then decaying. This, of course, it's because of this. Ramp and decays. Ramp, decays. That's the whole idea. Now it sounds cool and it sounds, like a dark horn. That's what we are doing right now. Right. So now, of course, this is kind of missing something. So I'm going to be using the filter modulation just to add some, some kind of a movement, because right now it's just sounds cool, but it's super static. So I'm going to go all the way to the LFO and I'm going to use the LFO. I'm going to stand right here on the LFO. And of course, if we need to go up in rate, maybe I'm going to put it right there. And now this one will modulate the cutoff up and down. That's what we are doing, is doing something like this. So what you can do, or we can do, when we play a key, and I'm going to be playing right now, we could go all the way down, and as the sound decays, we can add a little bit of depth, and then go down until we play the next key. And you can do this with the mod wheel if you're using, a MIDI keyboard. Right now, I am using it, so if I do it with my mod wheel, and I'm doing it with my mod wheel right now. I'm using a key step, so it's kind of very hard to see where I'm, where am I kind of doing it, so I much prefer to do it right here, right now. So that's the plan, That's it, it's a dark horn, and we get a little bit of movement whenever we want to. So what am I going to do? So I'm going to add 4 different effects. First, I would like to, get maybe a little bit of saturation, or maybe even distortion, a little bit of delay, a little bit of modulation, and of course a reverb. So the first thing I'm going to do is just going to be distortion, which is not a distortion. It's a, clone, the clone. In this case, on the helix, it calls Minotaur, which is, the clone. So in this case, I'm just going to turn it on, and the gain is going to be very mild. So we are not doing a lot. We are just kind of changing the timbre a little bit. If I turn it off, notice it sounds way different. Now the gain is pretty low. Now I can even make it lower. I like it a little bit more. Now if I turn it off, what is that? It's giving us a little bit more, just a little bit more. The next one is going to be a delay, and I'm using a tape delay, a complex style of delay, and I'm syncing it to 1/4. The tempo is 110, and this is how it sounds. So that's it. Pretty simple delay. And of course with this, you're just adding an extra layer of depth. Something going on in the background. Because right now it's just, super simple. Right. Now the delay, it's mono. So right now we have a distortion, which is mono, of course. We have a delay, which is not super aggressive, but, it gives us something in the background, but it's mono. So we have no kind of a stereo spread. In this case, I'm just going to bring a chorus. So it's going to be a very mild chorus, but it's just going to make everything super wide. And we can really hear it now. Now, of course, the spread on the chorus, the chorus is stereo. And in this case, again, we have a mix. I have a mix control on this chorus. I can do a 50%. If I go all the way in on the chorus, it's just going to be all chorus, which is not my preference, my preferred sound. I'm going to do 50% or maybe a little bit less. Now, what I'm doing on this one, I'm doing a lot of depth. So if I play something and I make maybe shorter depth, it doesn't sound that big, which is fine, depends on what you want to do. So the depth will always just make it, wider, and it will make it move on the sides, on the side of the stereo image. Because we are using stereo, of course. And I'm pressing the wrong key. Now if I go all the way up on the depth, you feel that, right? But maybe it's just too much, so I'm gonna keep it on 70%, which is a lot, still a lot. And then of course the other kind of a control for the chorus, very important control, is gonna be the speed. Now right now it's a low speed. That's why the depth is not super obvious. If I go up on the speed, we're gonna hear it. Which is not something I like. Now it depends on what you want to do. If you want to get this kind of a vibrato type of sound, that's fine. But it's not what I want. I'm gonna keep it low. Because the chorus in this case, I just want to make it wider. That's pretty much all. And the next thing I'm going to be adding is going to be a reverb, and it's going to be a hall reverb. And I'm doing a lot of cutting on the higher frequencies. So with the reverb all the way in, wet 100%, it sounds like that. If I don't cut frequencies, it's like that. It's super bright, I'm going to be cutting a lot of the high frequencies. And I'm also cutting low frequencies, because this has a lot of lows, and if this is of course catching a lot of the lows, it's just gonna be way too much. So the reverb is a pretty aggressive reverb, 50% on the mix. And that's pretty much the whole thing. So when I play this, remember that we can do some modulation right here. So I'm gonna go to the mod depth. I release it. If you want to kill it, you just kill it right there. Okay, so let's just break it down. Now, on every synthesizer, whenever you do percussive elements, it's always a little bit different, because everything is on the filters. It's about the filter and how it works, how it sounds, if it's saturating or not saturating, and pretty much how it works. So it's always a little bit different. So, okay, so let's just kind of begin with this. Everything is gonna happen right here. If I play something right now, that doesn't sound like a kick. We are using a default patch, of course. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to go all the way down, so we have no oscillators going on. So if I play it right now, you can hear a click. Right, so, that's fine. So the magic is going to happen right here. So I'm going to go all the way up on the resonance. I'm going to go all the way up. So if we play something, nothing happens, but, if I show you the spectrum right now, you're going to see that something going on right there. So I'm going to go to the frequency, and I'm going to bring this down. So notice that we have that tone right there. So this is going to be like the fundamental. And notice that we are starting to get, closer. So in this case, the frequency, you can leave it at some point to fine tune that tone, which is fundamental for your kick. In this case, for now, I'm just gonna leave it all the way down, and then we will see how we can make it work. Now, that tone needs a little bit of movement. It needs to move like this. So what we need to do is a little bit of contour and work with the envelopes. Now, everything needs to be super short. But I do want a little bit of tail, so I'm gonna leave this one's on, and I want maybe this one on, and everything is gonna be off. So everything still needs to be short. We are gonna do some modulation with the contour, but we need to do just a tiny bit. So first, I'm gonna go to here. I'm going to do something around, maybe around 10, something like that. And the sustain is going to, make it sustain. In this case, I don't want this, and the attack is all the way down. I'm going to just leave it around there. If I do something, we are going to be getting some tone right there. So in this case, I'm going to go all the way down to the sustain, because I don't want to sustain it. And we get something but it's super short. So I'm going to need to open it just a little bit. And now we are there. We are starting to get the kick. Sounds very low, of course. Maybe you're going to go up in volume just a little bit and then going to go down. So what we are doing pretty much, we are doing very fast. That tone that we just saw, it's moving like this super fast. Now, if you make it super long or maybe longer, you're going to start hearing that tone, which sometimes depends on what you want to do. It's cool. In this case, we want to keep it short around there. Right. Now, the thing is that this one is giving us that fundamental, but it still sounds very, we need something else. So I'm going to bring an oscillator. I'm going to bring the number 3. I'm going to go all the way up, and this is going to give us, something more. I'm going to go to 32s, and now you can decide what you want to use right here. I'm going to use a triangle, and we will see how this sounds. Notice it's giving us a little bit, a little bit of something else. It's giving us a little bit more punch. Right, so this is going to give us kind of the fundamental place where we want to be. Still, lacks a little bit of something, so we need to kind of adjust all the envelopes just to make it sound a little bit better. Right now, it's just super short, which is fine. I'm going to make it a little bit longer. Notice that now we get that oomph. And if I make it super long, we get a lot of the subs. Now, if I play in sustain, notice that right there, we get that sub, which is going to be that one. And it's sustaining, which is maybe something, sometimes not what you want. You want to keep it in control, keep it in check. Now, the sustain, again, is going to do the same. If you sustain the keys, it's going to sustain that sub, which sometimes, again, is something that you don't want. Maybe you just want to go down as soon as it goes down. But maybe you do want some sustain. Completely up to you. I'm going to keep it around there. And now the thing is going to be this one, and it's going to be this one. Because remember, that tone, it's going to pretty much change the kick. I can leave it around there. And it's going to give us, a nice kick. But I can move the contour. And we get more bite. Now, of course, all of this just depends on what you want to do. If you want less, you just do less. And if you want more bite, you do more. Gonna do a little more volume. So that, could be a good kick. It's, it's a low kick. So what happens if we move the filters? If we move the cutoff? You're gonna start hearing that, which is maybe, again, not what we want. So if I go all the way off, maybe if I do just a little, it's gonna give us that something. Alright, so that's pretty much the kick, Now, I'm gonna play a clip. I'm not playing it with my fingers. Notice that we have a lot of sustain. We can go down on this one, and down on this one. We have something more, shorter. If I turn off this one, we just get the resonance, which is fine. But I like it a little bit more with this. If I go up and start changing the waveform, it's going to sound different. Especially on the square. Notice how different it sounds. Right? A bit more in your face. In this case, I like the other one, which is a little bit smoother. And I'm going to leave that one. Now, what happens if you want to bring more? Of course you can. But you don't need to. Maybe you're going to bring it right there. And bring that one. But in my case, I'm just going to leave it off. You just don't need to. Alright, so that's the kick, pretty much. Alright, so let's just create some hats. This is going to be very simple, fairly simple. Everything happens with the noise. So if I play it right now, we have a default patch, of course, and if I play it, it's gonna be that, which is just not gonna work with our kick. So I want to create kind of a short hat. Now, all the oscillators, we can turn them off because the hats happen, we get the hats with the noise. So I'm going to go with white noise in this case, all the way up. You can use pink noise. In this case, I'm just going to use white, and then we're going to toggle between them and see, how it sounds. So everything is going to be here, and it's going to happen on the right here on the cutoff frequencies, on the cutoff, and right here on the decay. Because if it's too long, it's just going to be too long. So if I play it right now, it's giving us that, hot kind of a vibe, but it's just too long. So I'm gonna go right here, and instead of cutting low frequencies, I'm just gonna make it high pass. So I'm gonna cut a low, and this is gonna give us something. You can even use this as a sound effects if you wish. Notice that it sounds higher, and then we get a lot more of lows. I want more of the highs. I'm gonna leave it right there. Now, going up in resonance, it's going to give you that. So I don't want a lot of that. I just want a little bit. And now the amount of contour, we are not going to use it. We don't really need it. So all of this is just, a nonsense. We are not going to really use it. What we really need to check to control is going to be the decay of the loudness contour. Now, right now, if I play a key and sustain it, it's going to sustain, which is maybe not that something that you want. You want something super short. So now, since everything is so short, just need a little bit of decay. And depends on how much, how long the tail you want it to be. You need to adjust your decay. Now, if you turn this off, well, right now this is off. If you turn it on and you go up on the decay, everything is going to be just, super long. I'm going to play the clip, with the kick. Which is not bad, but it's super long. I want to make it shorter. Now, since it's super short, I kind of don't need this. You can enable it and, just experiment a little bit with this. I want it short. I want something super short. So for me, like going to 10, it sounds cool with the kick. And I'm going to go a little bit down in volume. Because now, the next one, we're going to do the snare. But notice that everything happens with the noise. Getting just sound designing with noise is something very common. If I go to a pink, it's gonna sound darker, which is again something that you might prefer. In this case, I much prefer something a little bit more noisy. Okay, so that's gonna be our hat. We need to go to the snares, but there's something that's telling me that the hats are just missing something. They're just a little bit too dry. So I'm going to be adding a little bit of reverb, and this is going to be a room reverb. I'm not doing a lot, and the mix is like way down, and the decay it's all, almost all the way down. You're just doing a little bit. If I do a lot of mix, it's going to sound like that, which is not bad, but we hear a lot of the room, not a lot of the hat. So maybe bringing the mix down is just a little bit better for this. Now we can go to the decay and make it longer. But it's just maybe too long. I kind of like it either way. I'm just going to keep it, on the decay around maybe 30%, something like that. Kind of like that. If I remove the reverb, you're going to notice it's gone. Now it's on. Off. Now you notice that something is off. Now, another thing that you can do, especially, with this, you can go and bring distortion. And I'm going to bring that Minotaur, the clone, and I'm going to turn it on. And this is going to completely change how it sounds. Now, this is going from super bright to darker. So that's how distortion and saturation, how important it is for us. I'm going to 100% all the gain up. And it's kind of giving me some noise as well. But I'm going to keep the gain very low, and the tone is all the way up. If I bring the tone down, even though this is just making it darker, right, by default, it's going to be more. It's going to be darker, which is something that maybe I don't want. So I'm going to keep the tone all the way up. And if it's bringing the level of the hat down, you just can go up on the level. And I kind of like that, right? I'm just kind of like it. If I turn off the distortion, just a completely different thing. Off, on, sorry, off. Just way different. Right, so in this case, I'm just gonna leave it off because now I'm gonna do the snare, and the snare is just gonna occupy part of that frequency. So, all right, so that's it pretty much. Let's go to the snares. Right, so we have some kicks, we have some hats, let's do some snares. So right now, if I play the clip with a default patch, we are, on a default patch, it sounds, not good. Now, the snare, it's pretty similar to doing some hats. And in this case, I'm gonna, again, just turn everything off and turn this one on. Now, this one is gonna be very useful for us right now. So notice that I'm doing the same thing with the hat. I'm gonna go all the way and I'm gonna go to white. Now, the difference is going to be in the filter mode. Instead of doing, the high, we're gonna do the low. And of course, this one is gonna be, off. But what we want to do, we want to go right here to this, and this, and leave it off, and this one is going to be off, and this one is going to be off. Now, if I play this, it doesn't sound like a hat, of course. But we're going to do a lot with the envelopes. So for now, I'm just going to go all the way down, all the way down, all the way down on this one, and all the way down on this one. Now, we want to do some amount of contour, but I want to do some cutting. So I'm going to go around -2, around there. I guess that's fine. So then I want to do some amount of contour, and I want to do some modulation. And we can hear it in the background. But I'm going to do some decay because right now we get nothing. And since we have nothing right here, I'm going to need to open it. And there we go. That could be a snare. I mean, it sounds like a, snare. Or maybe an analog snare. Now you can make it shorter. Sounds way different, right? So in my case, I'm just gonna put it around, between 200 and 600. Just leave it right there. So then we have the, this one can give us something extra. This, how it sounds right now, it just sounds cool. Just sounds cool. We can make it shorter, or we can make it just longer. In this case, I'm gonna keep it right there on the 10s. Maybe right there. Okay. So we can bring this one in and see what happens if we saturate this, if we overload it. Notice this changes way, it's really changing. It's giving more punch. In this case, I want that kind of I want that. I like that. If you don't like it, that's fine. In this case, I'm just going to keep it on and make sure that this overloads every time it hits. And that is overloading, like that. Because that's too much. Just a tiny bit. Off. On. And there we go. Now, still, this, needs something extra. So what we can do, we can add a little bit of reverb. Now, when you actually mix snares, you might be adding some reverb or extra reverb to the snares, whether it's a played reverb, just to make it longer, just to make it, to fill the room, to make the mix fill the room. Because on a drum kit, the first thing that you hear when you hear a drum kit is going to be the snap of the snare. Now, whenever you put some room, maybe some reverb on a kick, you're not going to feel a lot of the room. So what gives you, what you hear when you hear the room is going to be the snare. So adding some reverb on the snare is going to, add a new layer of depth. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring a reverb, but it's going to be a very super slow, short reverb. And it's going to be a plate reverb. Can you hear it? I'm pretty sure you can. If I turn it off, it's pretty dry. Now the decay, since this is a plate, it's going to give us that tone. It's going to give us a tone. Now the mix is almost all the way down. It's 10%, just not a lot. Now if I make more, make it, mix 30%. Just maybe not what you want. Depends on, what you want to do. This case 10 is fine. And the decay is around, 35%, which is not a super long decay. If I make it longer, and I need to bring a little bit more mix, it's gonna be too long. So my case around 30-something% and 10% of the mix is fine. Just to give it, a little bit of depth. Right now, off, dry, on, just a little bit better. Maybe I'm gonna go up on the mix. Maybe too much. I'm gonna leave it on 11%. Now another thing we could do is we could bring a little bit of distortion. If I turn it on, it's just changing this completely. And this is the same overdrive we've been using, which is the clone, which is a very mild kind of a distortion pedal. It's actually an overdrive. So if I go all the way down on the gain, sounds like that, which is pretty similar, but still, it's changing. Notice it's very bright. And now it's kind of taming the transient, making it darker. I'm gonna go all the way down on the tone and just add a little bit of gain. And I kind of like that. Now, without the processing, without the, the distortion and the reverb, it sounds like this. And with the distortion and the reverb, it sounds like that. Way different. Off. On. Now, of course, since the distortion is kind of a squashing, we get a little bit more tail. So we can just go and dial the decay and maybe make it shorter. Just to make it fit, a little bit better. And that's gonna be the snare. All right. Okay, so let's just, break it down. And what we are going to be doing, we are going to be doing some modulation pretty much to the filter and everything else. So we are going to be using some patching, and we are going to use the third oscillator as an LFO. That's the plan, at least. Okay, so let's just, first kind of get, a good sound and then modulate it. So this one is going to be on, this one is going to be on. We're going to use the 1 and the 2, and I'm going to go all the way up, maybe up to 8. And I'm going to keep this one up to 8, maybe this one a little bit less. And I'm going to keep this one on a triangle. I don't want a lot from this one because it's going to be on the higher kind of a side. And this one, I'm going to keep it on 16s. So right here, this one is going to be a narrow, pulse. And if I play something, that's the sound. Notice that this one is not doing a lot. And we could have already did this at the beginning. Right? I do want some, noise. And I'm going to bring it up, and I'm going to do the pink one. Right, so far, so good. I'm going to keep this one on the low. We're going to cut to high frequencies, and I'm going to do a lot of cutting. I'm going to go around maybe 3 or something like that, Then later we can change it. I'm going to do some resonance, maybe about 4. Going to leave it right there. And we are going to do, of course, some amount of contour, but, maybe not that much. I'm going to maybe go to 5, and then we can change it. So in terms of this ones, we need to do something. We're not doing much. So I'm going to do some sustain, not a lot of sustain. Just going to leave it right there. And notice that we are starting to get that, dark vibe. I'm going to do a little bit of attack and, decay pretty much all the way down. Right here on this one, I'm going to do this. Notice the difference. If I turn it off, turn it on. Now we are doing something right here, right? I'm going to put it around 10 just to put it someplace. Maybe that was too much. Maybe a little bit less than 10. And on the attack right here, I am going to add some attack around 10 as well. On the decay, I guess I'm going to do 10. And the sustain all the way up. Now, it doesn't sound bad. You know, we get that dark, vibe, which is fine. But maybe what I want to do some modulation. So this is kind of the ground, the main sound. So what I want to do, let me just bring a cable. I want to do some LFOing. So I'm going to grab the square LFO, and the square LFO is going to modulate the cutoff CB. We are going to modulate the cutoff CB with this one in a minute. So I'm going to go right there for now. And if I do something, notice that we get something. And at some point, it's going to go down. I'm holding the keys, and then it goes off. And it's because we are modulating this with a square LFO. And from where are we controlling this? We're going to be controlling it for here. I'm going to go there. Doesn't matter right now, but right now, the depth is going to control this. And this one should be here, but we are going to use it right here. Now this one is going to change the rate of this. So right now with this, we control how we modulate the cutoff frequencies. So I'm going to leave it around 5 just to put it somewhere. Right, I'm going to just leave it right there. Right, and we get that, on and off kind of a vibe, which is fine. But I would like to do something a little bit better. We are going to use this to modulate the same filter but with a different shape, right? That's the plan. So I'm going to go all the way right here. Make sure that this one, it's not, right there. It needs to be right here at the bottom. Because when you use it right there, the rate is going to go up if you play higher keys, and it's going to go down if you play lower keys. So it's going to go faster with higher keys, slower with lower keys, which is something that I don't want. I want to keep it a constant kind of a motion. Now in this case, if you leave it right there, we are going to be using it to modulate it with the depth. So this is going to be modulating this because we are selecting the oscillator number 3, the knob is all the way to the oscillator number 3, and we are selecting that right there, oscillator number 3. So when I go up in depth, this one is going to modulate this as well. So we are doing it with a square and with this one. But since we are using oscillator rates, we get that. It's super fast. This is not what I want. I'm gonna leave it right there. So if I go lower, we get a different vibe, and this could be, a different patch. Right. Now I'm gonna keep it on a saw, just to see what happens. Now I don't want this. I want kind of a normal LFO. So this is what I want. Now the LFO, this one, it's kind of too fast for me. I want to make it slower. And there you go. This is what I want. So what is going on in the background? So if I go all the way down in this one, what we are listening is the cutoff filter going on and off with the square on off on off off on off. And this one is kind of modulating it, but it's modulating it with a ramp. So we are ramping, and at the same time we are just doing on and off. So we get a blend of both. Notice that we are going from down and up, but at the same time we are doing that on and off, and we are kind of doing that motion but on and off at the same time. So we are doing a blend of both. If you go too aggressive, it's going to be, of course, a lot more aggressive. You can go into some in-betweens, or maybe just, go all the way in. And notice that we are using a triangle, but it doesn't matter right now because we are using the LFO, so it doesn't matter. This, we'll use this. Now, I wonder what's going to happen if we change this to maybe to the other. And this is a ramp down. So instead of going down, up, it's going up and down. But if you use a triangle, just up and down, up and down. I like this song. Now, of course, the rate is going to affect, the square. It is going to not affect this one. So we can go faster on the square, and this one will not be affected. Now remember, we can change how this one operates. We can get really cool sounds out of this. And we're gonna do a lot of this on the next volume. We're gonna focus on this, and the next one, maybe the number 4. I'm gonna do 4 of each. We're gonna focus on connecting this to other synths. That's the plan. Right now, this one and the volume 1 and the volume 2 is about getting some normal patches, some basses, some cool pads, some cool drones, something like that, and then we're gonna do some other things like, using patching or just connecting it with a different synth. All right, so of course it sounds cool. Let me just get it down. Gonna like it right there. I can like it right there. Now, of course, if you're playing this in a track, the LFO and the of course the rate, they have a motion. So if you have some kick going in the background, you're gonna need to adjust the rate and this rate to kind of follow your kick, you follow your tempo. Something that you need to do is analog gear. That's, what you need to do. Now, of course, it sounds very dull. We need to bring some effects, and I'm not going to go crazy. I'm going to do something that we kind of already did in the past, pretty much at the beginning. I'm going to do some saturation. So if I play the clip, I have a clip going on right here. Let me just play it. Right, so that's going to be the clip. I'm going to do some saturation. Now this is bringing that dirt. It's because it's squashing, right? So saturation. And this is the Minotaur, the clone from Helix, the line 6. Now, if I want brighter, I'm going to bring the tone up. And I'm not doing a lot of gain. I'm doing 10%, even less than 10%. And it's just going to give me grit, which is what I want in this case. Now, what else? I'm going to do a delay. Now, the delay is going to give us a lot of depth. And I'm going to make it a very kind of an intrusive delay so we can get more things going on. Now, the feedback is way high. Let me kind of stop it, and I'm going to play a key. So that's the feedback. It's pretty wild. Now, of course, if you don't like this, you can go down in the mix, or you can go down on the feedback. In this case, I want high mix, and I want more feedback. I want something like that, because right now this delay is mono, and I want something going on, some movement that something else that will merge with the main audio, with the main signal. And since, of course, I'm syncing the BPM, and I'm using 120 BPM, which doesn't matter right now, but I'm just doing 1/4 if you're wondering about the time. And if not, it's just 500 milliseconds. In this case, I'm gonna go to the chorus. We want to make it a little bit wider. Right now, it's just too narrow because everything is mono. Which is not bad. It depends on where you want to fit this. If your track needs something mono, you keep it mono. In this case, I just want to make it wide because it sounds better on your headphones and on my headphones too. So I'm going to bring a chorus, pretty normal chorus, and then the blend is 50% if you're wondering. I'm not doing full chorus. And gives us that vibe, and I'm going to bring a little bit of reverb. And we already know this reverb is a Hall reverb, and I'm cutting a lot of the highs. I'm gonna go all the way wet on the reverb, and this is how it sounds. I'm cutting a lot of the highs. If I cut less, we are gonna get a lot of the highs, which are really, a little bit crazy. If I leave this and mix it, it still sounds cool. But I'm gonna maybe chop around, chop a lot of the high frequencies. I want the darker sound. Alright, so that's it, pretty much without the effects. And with the effects, there you go. Alright, so that's it for the volume number 2. On the previous one, on the 1, we made, very simple sounds. On this one, we just went a little bit more complex sounds, including some percussive sounds. And on the next one, we're going to do some patching, and we're going to create more crazy sounds like the last patch we did. Now, if you like all this, let me know down in the comments. This is kind of new to me. This is the second video I make about this, or creating some sounds with some synths. Let me know down in the comments if this is useful and you want more of this. Now, of course, if you like this, remember to like and subscribe. And if you have the money and you want to buy me a coffee, you can. Just go to the links at the description and you have, the YouTube thanks now. You have Patreon, you have PayPal, so you can. All right, so see you on the next one.